Okay, so how to service your dearson handpieces. These are all the same but slightly different. This one's got a irrigation housing on the side of it, but effectively all the dearson handpieces are identical. They are self-service and self-strippable, so if your cable snaps or you need to re-lubricate it, you can do this yourself. It hasn't got to go back to dearson properly. Generally speaking, you won't have to do very much with these. All you will have to do, same as the Equilite headpieces, is to use the grease nipple ports on the apple core and the flexi disc head, and to grease them every time you've finished using them. So again, if you're doing 10 sets of teeth or 1 set of teeth per day, carry on, get them all done, give it all a clean off, and then the last thing you do before you put it back in the box is to dry it and pump some grease in the head. Again, like the Equilite headpieces, there is no sealing on the geared unit on the top, so where the disc spins and the apple core spins, if muck and water gets in behind there, which it will, the only thing stopping it from getting embedded in the gearing and chewing it to pieces is the grease in the head. So if you aren't pumping grease in, you will end up filling these up with muck. While the hand pieces themselves are serviceable, the gearing of the heads is not. That's a back to dearson jobby, and by and large it's several £100 each time. So if you do nothing else with these, just grease the heads every time you use them. To pull them apart, the main reason for doing that is going to be if your drive cable snaps, which they do infrequently, but occasionally. You'll tend to get a little bit of warning. You'll find that maybe it binds up and the clutch engages when you wouldn't normally expect it, or that it just doesn't seem to be spinning quite as quickly, but you tend to get a few weird warning signs before the cable does snap. When the cable does snap, ultimately your headpiece won't spin when the motor's engaged. You can check by simply spinning the end of the headpiece with your thumb or your finger and peering down the housing, and you should see the drive slot at the end rotating. If your cable's snapped, all you'll want to change it is a set of plumber's wrenches like these, which should have come in the box with every new Dremel, or a set of mole grips. On the end of every handpiece is the slot that the motor goes into. This is not perfectly round. There are 2 flattened bits which allows you to get a spanner on it. So to get it off, find the flattened bits with your mole grips or your plumber's wrench, grip it and twist it in an anti-clockwise direction, and you will slowly start to undo it. Try very hard not to grip the bottom where the threads are. If you squash the threads, it won't go back together again, but it doesn't matter too much if you end up gripping the actual end of the shaft and giving it a spin. The ones with the irrigation on are a pain because you can't just spin it because that gets in the way, but fundamentally, once you've loosened it a wee bit, it will come back to being finger loose and you can just undo it and pull it all the way out. That then reveals the end of your drive cable. At the other end of the headpiece, where you've got your slightly embossed section, turn that again all the way around, and your headpiece will then pull off, and you've then got the other end of your drive cable. This one is fairly mucky, so this is stuff that's come through the gears and then got stuck on the end of the drive cable, so this one could have done with more greasing, to be frank. But if your cable's snapped, grasp the end and just give it a pull, and it will come out obviously in 2 pieces. This one is still intact, so it's coming out in 1. And again, you've got the same spring around the multi-strand cable. This is filthy, frankly, so it could do with being cleaned. So if it is dirty, a bit of paper rag and just give the whole thing a bit of a clean off, and you will get it back to looking something bordering unacceptable. This one's actually going rusty, so you've had water in here that has then caused it to oxidise. Having got it reasonably clean, re-lubricate it with your toothpaste tube, the Fordham shaft lubricant. Similar to the main drive cable on the motor unit, you put a thin drizzle all the way down the cable from top to bottom. You don't need much, just enough to give it a bit of a smear all the way down. Having got all the way to the end, rub it in with your fingers so that whole of the outside is covered. And the tricky bit with these is then getting the cable back into the handpiece, because there's a plastic sheath or a rubber sheath which sits inside the metal housing, which you need to largely, without being able to see what you can do, drop your cable into and then try and give it a push and a wiggle, and it will hopefully not go out the end. But with the benefit of a bit of persuasion, you will be able to wiggle your cable out the end and then attach your drive head and bottom piece at the same time. Just pause and I'll just give this a